My name is Brian Mitchell. I'm the Director of the Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology. And I have several colleagues here who will talk a little bit about some of these, some of the requirements that we have coming up for this program. So just wanted to quickly remind everyone, we have, this is the first of several technical assistance webinars. So mark your calendars for the upcoming webinars, 2 later this week and then 2 next week. Next slide. So here's the agenda for today. And what I will do is I'll turn things over to Ziggy from CTC, who is a contractor with Nevada, to go ahead and take it from here. Ziggy?
All right. Yep. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Just to frame this a little bit, we're going to just go over some of the financial elements of the application process, but we'll focus on pro forma and business plan today. That doesn't mean we're not going to go over the other aspects of it. We'll touch on them briefly so you can get a sense of what's coming your way, but these will be covered in upcoming presentations. As a general approach, OSIT is trying to balance the requirements coming from the federal government and NTIA in particular, who's managing the overall program, and also trying to make it as user-friendly as possible within the guide rails that NTIA has provided. Hopefully, many many of you have already looked at the IP Volume 2, the initial proposal Volume 2, which was one of the requirements for getting this process underway that NTIA has approved. And it has, and everything we're saying today sort of follows within that approved Volume 2. And if you want any more details, you can always and should consult with it for the application process itself, as well as the technical assistance webinars that we are providing. So 3 different sort of areas. There's the applicant financials, what's your capacity to execute on the project and your financial health. Certifications that you have the ability to make do on your commitments. And there are a few of those. And then the project financials, the sustainability, and your ability to execute on the specific project. So the business plan part focuses more on your ability to actually build it out within the time frame that you're required to, and the pro forma looks at the sustainability both during and past the project completion. So a little bit about financial statements that are required. The notice of funding opportunity, which is kind of the sort of the Bible of what we're required to follow. Those are the rules for the program as a whole that NTA has provided. And according to that, audited financial statements are required in the application phase, the 3 prior fiscal years. If you don't have audited yet, for all 3 years, provide unaudited financial statements, but you'll also then have to certify that you will make the audited statements available if you receive an award. Otherwise you can't get an award and be certified by NTIA for it. So there are part of the applicant financials to ensure that you are viable, there are either a letter of credit or performance bond that is required as part of the application process itself. That is not required yet. What you will need instead is a letter of commitment that shows that where your financial institution basically says, "Yep, we fully intend to make a letter of credit available if the applicant wins the areas that it wants and up to X award." And the requirement is for 25% of a sub award if you do a letter of credit. So obviously you'll estimate what it is that you want to have available for the project, what your bid will be, and then set it at 25% of that. There is an option to reduce the value of the letter of credit as you complete milestones within it. But at this stage, we're not looking for the letter of credit itself. Yeah, we're just looking for a letter of commitment from your financial institution. There are some alternatives for how um, to manage this commitment. And one of them is instead of 25% upfront with reduction as your milestones are completed, one of the options is to have 10% of the sub-award, but then it doesn't get reduced until you've completed all your milestones and the project has been built out. There's an equivalent performance bond. That one, however, is for 100% of the sub-award. And again, there's an option to reduce as you complete build-out milestones. There's more details on that in IP Volume 2, and we will cover this in more details in upcoming seminar, including the requirements one that will be on Friday, I believe it's scheduled. And other than that, just read up on IP Volume 2. I put in the relevant portions where these requirements are outlined are on page 58 through 60. So it should be easy to find. And this might be a good time if you are interested in participating in BEAD, and we certainly hope that you are. This would be a good time to start conversation with your financial institution for either the letter of credit or the performance bond. So it's on your radar and you don't have to scramble as the application window opens and you have to secure that letter of commitment. There are some pretty easy, there are some 3 major certifications that you have to make. And there are some minor ones that are sort of associated that you'll see once the application form is ready or the portal is ready. But until then, just the major ones is you basically certify that you can meet the obligations that are associated with the project, that you have the managerial and financial capacity to take this on. You have the funds available, and you have enough funds that you can make that you have the ability to do it with the expected grant amount, of course, but that you have the rest of the funds to complete it. And then, of course, that you'll comply with all the BEAD program requirements, and that includes the service milestones that you commit to as part of your project plan. There is a part of this that, if for those of you who have looked at how you are evaluated, there are, again, this will be part of a future webinar where we'll go into details about how the scoring works. But there is a so-called scoring rubric that uses categories that are included in IP Volume 2, several of which were mandated by NTIA. And we have explanations about how the applicant's project proposal will be scored. And part of it is a financial capacity score. And there are some narrative elements to it that we will be looking at. That looks at your financial strength, sustainability, and investment potential, and you will complete that within the application itself, and tell us why you are able to take this project on, and it's at the project basis. So but if you are applying for multiple project areas, each one will then be a separate project. You probably will have the same reasoning in each, and you can, of course, duplicate it if that makes most sense in terms of the narrative piece of it. So a lot of it you can sort of reuse for each project. But of course, the specific financials will be unique to each project area. And that gets us to, there are some high-level project metrics that are derived from the business plan and the pro forma that you will be submitting as well. I'll go over this in a second, but some of the just suggestive ones, so you have a sense of what we look at, will be the cost per passing or per mile, the forecasted take rate, and revenue estimates. And those are all in the things you will be submitted and will be part of our evaluation and scoring. So here's the business plan. So some of this I just covered, but we're going to ask about details and assumptions of how the capital cost per passing was derived, how, and a statement of your overview of the plan to market to customers, and what it will cost you. So there's a revenue and expense element to this, but we want to also understand narratively how you're going to make this work and how you're going to market it. And then, as I suggested, there are going to be some key metrics that will be in both the pro forma and in the budget plan. So pro forma. Now I'll hand over to my colleague, Matt DeHaven, in a second. But the purpose of the pro forma, and I had intimated that in the very beginning, is to get a sense of the long-term sustainability of the project, and we'll look into your project cash flows for this particular project. And so, of course, that's going to look different for each project that you apply for. Matt, do you want to take over?
Yes, thanks, Ziggy. Yeah, so as Ziggy points out, each application will require submission of certain project-specific financial projections that demonstrate that the project will be on a path towards sustainability extending a minimum of 3 years beyond the build-out period. This is a specific requirement of the NOFA. So this is not just something we're adding unduly for additional application burden here. This is something that we absolutely has to be a part of it, so that we are able to evaluate sustainability, and in particular risk relative to assumptions that go into that. This is really an exercise in articulating your key business related assumptions and correlating these to the project budget and the build out timeframe. In addition to the narrative provided in the business plan, the primary required submittal along these lines is a financial pro forma that illustrates key assumptions empirically and will depict annual cash flows and cumulative cash on hand corresponding to the build out and transition into the operating phase of the project. Can you jump to the next slide, please, Iggy? So as shown in this illustrated example. The pro forma is going to need to capture a few things that are pretty standard in terms of financial statements you've probably seen or prepared in the past. Specific to this project, though, or to the project for which you're submitting an application, it will need to capture things like the distribution of capital investments in construction, network electronics, and other eligible expenses that align with the project budget. Grant fund payments corresponding to these investments, aligning with your specific funding request. Operating costs, both eligible and ineligible for grant reimbursement. Of course, revenues from customer service fees. And then any applicable costs and proceeds associated with financing that may be specific to your case. We would expect the pro forma to align with your projections around take rates, build out schedules, and customer service pricing, some of those metrics that Ziggy was referring to earlier. The pro forma is not a financial projection for your entire enterprise. Rather, this is limited to project-specific elements that are incremental to your existing business, again, specific to this project. The pro forma is not necessarily the place where project budget and associated funding request details are provided. The budget submission, and I guess the next slide, we have a slide that illustrates what that's going to look like. The budget submission will contain a more granular itemization of eligible project expenses and the breakdown of grant funds and matching funds for each, which again should tie out to the associated roll-up of particular expense categories in the pro forma. And this we're anticipating the application will require on a quarterly basis. That's really all I have to say about those two elements, Ziggy.
Yeah, we don't, yes, I think that concludes it, and we're open for questions. And just as a reminder, the other financial elements, such as letter of credit, and the elements of the scoring, it will be covered in upcoming webinars. And if you don't feel comfortable asking questions here, or you need some time to think about your questions, you can always reach out via email to highspeednv@gov.nv.gov, and we will provide answers that will either be incorporated in the application material or in the frequently asked questions, so that answers will be available to everybody.